everybody. So happy to see everybody. So happy and alert today that we're going to get going. I had a few issues with online students that they could not hear properly last week. So this week I'm going to endeavor to stay put, trap myself behind the thing with the mic and not throw myself out there where the mic's behind me. The second thing is the lady that helps us set this up was she had suggested, so a couple of people are hearing shrieky sounds or sounds like they're underwater. She suggested that we all turn off our Wi-Fi. So if you've got any applications that are running right now that you don't need on Wi-Fi, I mean, obviously you can keep, if you're writing notes, you can keep your Word program open or whatever to write notes. Just take off your Wi-Fi capability, because she thinks that that's also potentially affecting the quality of the sound of the student. So they said they had, a few of them had real difficulty hearing Mimi Lee, so last week. So we definitely want to, well, and me too. I apparently sounded screechy on occasion, which I said was probably true, but I'll try and stop that too. So this week I'm gonna stay anchored as much as I can back here, and if you guys will take care of turning off your Wi-Fi unless you have an emergency, that would be awesome. All right, so we are at week 4 already. Questions, issues? Anybody holding on to anything they want to ask already? See, that's wonderful. You know. As I already said, I'm going to keep closer to the mic. This week we're going to do the direct method and chapter 16, which you've already read. Correct? Yes. For those of you online, you're going to want to download a couple of things from DocShare. For those of you here, we have hard copies ready for you when we get to that part of class. When we get to that part of class, for those of you online, you can see what it is and head to DocShare and pause the video and grab that out as you go. All right, so we're going to start with the Larson-Freeman. You remember I said how we were going to do this. The Larson-Freeman basically takes us through a history of methods, and then I'm connecting up the Brown with some of the priorities of those methods. So the second chapter in the Larson-Freeman is the direct method, which, as you have read, is a complete pendulum swing from the grammar translation. And why is it a pendulum swing?
Focuses on speaking communication.
Good. It focuses directly on speaking and communication, right? So it's the idea that although grammar translation has its pluses, if it was somebody who actually wanted to learn to speak the language, they felt that this wasn't possible, right? So the perceived failings of Gowan, he suggested we want to prioritize speaking. And the other really important issue is there's no translation allowed, okay? Remember that in grammar translation, you remember from reading seeing the video, that the guy was like Vietnamese, 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 English, Vietnamese, Vietnamese, you know. So there's the real huge difference here, in addition to the fact that you prioritize speaking and not reading and writing, is the fact that there should be absolutely no translation. Okay, so that's the sort of theoretical basis. I don't know how many of you, if any of you, have heard of the Blitz School. Yeah, some of you from Brazil might have heard of Wizard School, which was similar, which is what was going on when I was looking for jobs in the 1980s. And it was totally based in the direct method. and you joined this. It's still going. You can still join the Blitz school, although it's, I think, probably, I mean, it's still in Europe. Have you guys? Yeah.
And also, I think they if you search in internet, they have like copies from some of the base because they have their own book, right?
Yeah. God, yeah. They have their own book. They have their own method. I mean, one of the things that put me off was they recorded you on video as you were teaching. So I'm being recorded now, obviously, but in that case, like, you were recorded by the Blitz employers to make sure that you were performing the Blitz method. So if you as a teacher were not doing what you were supposed to do, you got hauled in by the director and said, look at this video. This is so wrong. You're not supposed to do that. What is it that they wanted you to do? Well, it has to do with no translation, asking lots of questions, expecting people. I don't know if we can actually pull that up. But it was essentially a version of the direct method. So its tradition of success goes all the way back to the 1980s. To Europe. Well, now it offers English, French, Spanish. Let's see if we can get another Blitz method. Let's see what they've got. Very attractive teachers. Question and answers. Here you go. Why does that sound? Why does that sound familiar in terms of the direct method?
The students would be able to speak.
Yeah, what specifically though? What does he say? If you can read that. I'm sorry if you can't read that.
Maybe using the French. Q&A.
Questions and answers. Remember? Huh?
Animated.
Animated questions and answers. That's the direct method. The direct method is about questions and answers. Okay? That's how you begin with a direct method.
And about perfect pronunciation, right?
Right, but now we're moving also into audiolingualism, but the direct method prioritizes questions and answers, right? So you stay within a certain area. So then Blitz develops these things, so then he made a name for himself as a Blitz, administrator. So, this Blitz method, which he, has made a lot of money on, obviously, and is, as far as I know, still going, although I don't know how well it is. I haven't heard of it for a while, but when I started in the 1980s, it was the way of doing language learning, is that it was solely based in the direct method. Okay. And now it was his idea to include some video cameras in every classroom so that he could check. And what he was checking on, or what the administrators were checking on, was that you were following the Blitz method, that you were asking questions and taking answers and repeating answers, and that you weren't doing anything that you shouldn't be doing, which might, for example, translating, God help you if they heard you translate in a Blitz classroom. You weren't allowed to translate. That was not the way that you worked. Okay. You can still train as a Blitz teacher should you want to, and should you be willing to pay the fee. That's a possibility for you. All right. I want to start with a sample lesson. I don't quite know why Larson and Freeman and Anderson mess with this, but in most of the chapters, they put a sample method that they created themselves. And in some, they didn't. And in this one, they didn't. And I don't know whether it's because they didn't want to go into the direct method, but I chose one for you that is absolutely the direct method on point. Now, it focuses on child learners, you'll see in this video, but it's no different from for the adults. They will have the same experience. The questions and answers obviously may be different, and the sort of interaction may be different, but it's exactly the same idea. You focus on short, easy to repeat Q&A sessions to try and move you forward. Damien Zellas is kind of a cutie. This is sort of a, so that's another reason I just, no.
Okay, so hopefully, let's try this again.
Why is this here?
You can click on the X up there.
Thank you.
You didn't touch a button, did you?
No.
Okay, so let's continue. David, you have to stand up. You can sit down in your chair, but not on the floor. Okay, so Sophia, how old are you?
I am 7 years old.
David,
Yes?
is she 10 years old?
No, she is not 10 years old.
How old are you?
I am 8 years old.
Is he 5 years old?
No, he's 8 years old.
How old are you?
I'm 8 years old.
Is she 8 years old?
Yes, she is.
She is?
She's 8 years old.
How old are you?
I am 8 years old.
Is he 7 years old?
No, he is 8 years old.
Good. How old are you?
I'm 8 years old.
Is she 8 years old?
Yes, she is 8 years old.
Okay. Do you have long hair?
No, I do not have long hair.
Does he have short hair?
He do has short hair.
He-
Yes, he do.
He
does.
He does. What does he?
He does have short hair.
He does what?
Has short hair.
He has, but he does have.
Short hair.
Okay. Do you have short hair?
No, I don't have short hair.
Do you have long hair?
Yes, I do have long hair.
Does she have short hair?
No, she don't have.
She what?
She doesn't have short hair.
Good. Yes. Do you have long hair?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Does she have long hair?
Yes, she has
She has.
long hair.
Okay. Again, so does she have long hair?
Yes, she has long hair.
Good. Does she have short hair?
No, she doesn't have short hair.
Very good. Does he have long hair?
No, he does not have long hair.
Excellent. Do you have a brother?
Yes, I do have a brother.
This kid's
How
really
many
big.
brothers do you have?
I have only one brother.
Excellent. Does he have a brother?
Yes, he has a brother.
Okay. Do you have a brother?
Yes, I do have one brother.
One brother. Do they have brothers?
Yes, they do have brothers.
Do you have a sister?
Yes, I do have a sister.
How many sisters do you have?
Two.
You have two
I have
sisters.
2 sisters.
Does she have 3 sisters?
No, she doesn't have 3 sisters.
How many sisters does she have?
She has 2 sisters.
She
She
has.
has 2 sisters.
Very good. Do you have a brother?
Yes, I have a brother.
Do you have 2 brothers?
No, I don't have 2 brothers.
Okay. Does he have 3 brothers?
No, he doesn't.
Louder.
3 brothers.
You have to speak up so we can
No,
hear
he
you.
doesn't have 3.
Okay. David, do you have 3 eyes?
No, I do not have 3 eyes.
Does he have 3 eyes?
No, he doesn't have 3 eyes.
Okay, let's switch the camera.
I have one eye.
You have one eye, you have two eyes. Okay, hey, let's change the camera.
Hi, David.
Okay, so Sophia S. Where are you from?
I am from Mexico.
Is she from Canada?
No, she's not from Canada. She's from Mexico.
Excellent. Where are you from?
I am from Mexico.
Is she from Russia?
No, she is not from Russia.
Where are you from?
I am from Spain.
Okay. Is he from Spain?
Yes, he is from Spain.
Where are you from?
I am from Venezuela.
Is he from Venezuela?
Yes, he is from Venezuela.
Is he from Germany?
No, he is not from Germany. You are.
Ah, I am not from Germany. I am from the United States. I am not from Japan. Okay.
All right.
Sit back.
Oh, that's a problem for Venezuela. Hey.
Okay. David, sit back, please.
I'm sitting.
David, can you play the piano?
No, I cannot play the piano.
Can he play the piano?
No, he cannot play the piano.
David,
Okay, so I think you get the general idea. All right, so David is kind of like awesomely good. The other dude is like so bad that it breaks your heart. And yeah, this little guy. And Damien's kind of cute in that 1990s sort of way, right? So, in what ways?
Maybe that's why they didn't make a video, because they wanted everyone to use Damien's video.
Yeah, maybe. I was very proud when I found Damien's video. There's actually a few videos, but my favorite is definitely Damien. Who one day I hope to meet at a TESOL convention. You know, I'll be wandering around a TESOL convention, I'll go, oh, Damien! Not so far. All right, so that is an absolute classic demonstration of the direct method. It couldn't be any more direct method than that, okay? So talk to me about in what ways that demonstrates the direct method that you read about in the book.
So it has a lot of question answering, no explicit explanations of the grammar rules.
Good. There's no explicit explanation of the grammar rules. There's just a lot of repetition, and there's a lot of question and answers. Sandy, good.
Echo correction.
Okay, good. Tell me what you mean by echo correction.
Correction, the teacher repeats with the rising tone, so that like.
Good.
Something?
Yeah.
No.
You have 10 years? Yeah, right. Good. By which the kid understands that they're supposed to correct that. Okay, good. Anything else, Nana?
The language was taught through speaking, and some cultural, like when he talked Venezuela, mentioning the countries, it's not.
Perfect. Language is taught through speaking and through kind of cultural, you know, there's no literary convention here. You know, we're not reading stories and answering stories. We're answering things about ourselves. Good. Perfect. Anything else? Yeah, Wampa.
The native language is not used.
Good. Native language not used. In fact, when I first watched this, I thought they were Italian. I can't remember why I thought they were Italian, but I did. And of course, you know, because we have no idea, you know, because there's no native language used at all. And there's no native language around the classroom either. It's all English that you see on the walls and everything else. Yes, Sandy.
Automation, like it's everything automatic, therefore the students are learning to think in the third.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's why, so it's supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be, are you 10 years old? No, I'm 7 years old. Is he 7 years old? No, he's 10 years old. Are you got long hair? No, you've got short hair. I mean, you're supposed to move it around like that, basically. Yes, Diego.
How do they get to that
Well, did you notice when I stopped it, he had a little, so that's his little sheet that he's working from. So basically every lesson that they go in there, you do one little set of question and answer, you know, prompts. So we've obviously done age, hair, what else is there, country. So then you'll do things like, for example, is he happy? Is he, you know, you'll do emotions, you'll do colors. Is his shirt blue? No, his shirt is not blue. His shirt is red. Is his shirt yellow? No, his shirt is red, you know. Yeah, so you build a very basic vocabulary, color, functional vocabulary.
So that was like the midterm where they test everything they've learned so far.
Well, so each lesson you really just do that. Yeah. So that was, they've obviously at this point, yes, done, you know, but then you build up, you know, then you'll do, so you might go back there in 6 weeks and they're doing question and answers on colors, functions, you know, yeah. So, but that's how you build your syllabus. It's an excellent question because many of these things, it's like, how do you build your syllabus? How would you build your syllabus in grammar translation?
Like the grammar, right?
Good, Naomi. Yeah, you.
Object, indirect object.
Good, exactly. That's exactly right. When you're doing grammar translation, you build your syllabus by grammar. You say first you learn the subject, then you learn the verb, then you learn the object, then you learn the indirect object. Yeah, and so on and so on. Whereas in this curriculum, you don't build explicitly on the grammar, right? You are learning through question and answer sessions, but you're building color vocabulary, you're building country vocabulary, you're building, you know, age or whatever. Yeah, good, Sandy.
So then to your question, do you do it with real words, with objects, with pictures, images?
Absolutely. Realia is something, yeah. Good. So I think realia came up in your chapter.
Yes.
Realia is something that is often used in direct methods. So, you know, for example, does Shelby deserve an almond joy? Why, yes, she does. Then I will give Shelby an almond joy. You know, so, you know, you do this whole sort of everything is done by not a break time, Shelby, break time. Everything is done by exemplification, and really, unlike one thing that's really crucial to sort of think about in terms of this is, unlike grammar translation, direct method said, let's use the language. You know, the language means, can you give me this? You know, I want a cup of tea. You know, it doesn't say, well, the other day I was reading Dostoevsky, and Dostoevsky, you know, posed the philosopher, oh God, thank you, question, da 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 da. You know, so it really says, you know, let's get back down to what it is. Where are you from? I'm from Venezuela. Oh, you sound like you're from Spain. No, I'm not from Spain. I'm from Venezuela, or whatever. This very basic kind of language skills.
I have a question.
Yes, Andy. Yeah.
With this method, can you really get into advanced levels?
Okay, so for everybody online, Sandy's question, which is excellent, is can you ever get into advanced levels? And I'm going to repeat something I said maybe 2 weeks ago. All of these methods will take you until a low intermediate. But then at that point, you're sort of, or a mid-intermediate. But at that point, you're sort of on your own, okay? Why are you on your own? For a number of reasons. One is, by the time you've got to mid-intermediate, which is, I'm going to go on vacation there, and I want to be able to drink the ouzo and eat the fabulous local food, so I want to be able to ask for it, right? I want to be able to say paella or whatever. Then you're moving beyond general purposes. Okay, so that's English for general purposes. If you want to go further than that, you're usually doing it for some kind of ESP, English for specific purposes. which may be academic purposes or something else, which means you've got to go beyond that thing. And the second thing is, as we've talked about before, there's this idea, you know, somehow there's a glass ceiling between mid-intermediate and those people who succeed in becoming advanced or post-advanced learners. So just think about who was in your classroom, those of you who are from EFL backgrounds. You know, there was a ton of kids, I'm assuming, in your classroom who did not thrive at English. True or not true?
Yes, yeah.
True, right? So there are a ton of kids who did not thrive at language learning yet in this area, yet for some reason you did. And now you're in a post-advanced graduate program in English as a second or foreign language. So you thrived, but a bunch of your school friends didn't. So the question is, what's the difference? What we know, Sandy, is that methodology doesn't seem to be it. There is no perfect methodology. Doing it this way versus doing it another way versus doing it another way doesn't necessarily get you beyond that mid-intermediate. No method, whatever they tell you online, however much they charge you, much has been shown to move anybody beyond a mid-intermediate level. And every method that we look at can get you to a mid-intermediate level. So in other words, there's something else going on. We either still have to find the magic method, or we have to work out what it is with post-advanced and advanced learners individually that gets you to this space. Okay. Now, that said, there are clearly methods that attract learners or do not attract learners, attract teachers or do not attract teachers. Okay, this idea of direct method, the Berlitz method, did not float my boat, right? I don't want to spend 5 hours standing in a classroom saying, is she 12 years old? No, she's not 12 years old. Is he 15 years old? No, he's not 15 years. And then taking those things and writing them out, which is what the next thing that they do. And then moving on to another set of things. Okay, that wasn't how I wanted to teach English. But, you know, these kids are enjoying it, right? They seem to be, you know, having fun. So who's to say it's a bad way of at least starting out, right? Okay, so we've sort of answered this, but what should students do in this method? Participate? How did they answer those questions?
Incomplete sentence.
Yeah, right. They had to say, no, she does not have long hair. She has short hair. Okay. Which is not what we would do, in fact, correct? What would we do? We would say,
No.
no. Right. No. But why are they making them do the whole thing? What's the point of that?
To use the language in context.
To do what?
To practice.
To practice what?
Grammar.
Yes, good. Good, the grammar. To make them implicitly learn the grammar. They don't explicitly learn the grammar. So if you get them to repeat, no, she does not have long hair. She has short hair. Right? No, he is not 12 years old. He is 8 years old. Then that way the idea is that you're implicitly learning that grammatical structure, right? So you keep it. Otherwise, you could just say yes, no, who cares, right? But that's not the way that that's done. What else should students do? Yes, Nana.
Self-correct.
Good. They self-correct. When the teacher prompts, they self-correct. That's absolutely correct. Okay, good. What about teachers? What should teachers do in this method?
Ask questions.
Yes, Sandy. Teachers should ask questions. That's clearly a priority. Yeah. What else?
You have the right example, right? When she's talking about some structure, he repeat and she make the different person, but that she has, do you have
Good.
example, right? The right example.
Good. So from what we saw, it begins with the teacher, right? So the teacher is the one that asks and answers the questions. Now, as you move through the direct method, if it was, for example, adult learners, and you ask Naomi to ask Diego. So you say, Naomi, ask Diego how old he is, and then, so slowly you try and shift the language movement from just you and one student to student to student. However, it's not random student to student. You don't just let them have at it. You don't say work in pairs and have at it. What you do is say, Nana asked Naomi, Naomi asked Shelby, Shelby asked Wampa. You go backwards and forwards like that, okay? Good. What else should teachers do?
It's kind of what she said, like they demonstrate, but they don't explain.
Good. Demonstrate, but not explain. What else?
Correct. Pay attention to.
Correct. Good. Okay. So every time somebody does something wrong, you do an implicit correction practice. So something we recognize as a typical implicit correction practice is standing there going, she has. And finally, the students work out that means she is, right? 12 years old rather than she has 12 years old, all right? Good. Let's see how we did on that. Okay, so students should be able to speak in the L2. Okay, there's no L1 involved. Ask and answer questions. Learn grammar rules inductively. Okay, so what's the difference between inductive and deductive? Let's just sort of quickly review that. Nana?
Rules, the difference is rules. So here there are no rules. It's learned through communication.
Okay, sort of. There are still rules, obviously.
For deductive, you just don't present the grammatical rules.
Good. Yeah, okay, so I know that's what you meant. So for grammatical rules, if it's inductive, you don't say, here's how you ask what someone's age is, okay? Or here's how you respond, I plus B plus year, as opposed to Spanish where it's I have. Yeah, so an explicit grammar rule would say, it's I plus B plus, explicitly contrast that with Spanish if you have a bunch of Spanish learners like he does, where you would say I have, right? But he never explicitly says to them, yeah, I know you're using I have because you do that in Spanish, okay? He just keeps correcting them implicitly, saying, it's not I have, it's I am, right? Good. Communicate basic information in speech, reading, and writing. So you start with speech and then you go to reading and writing, right? So you will start with speech and then the reading and writing will actively copy the speech. So they will have a worksheet that has the exact same thing as the speech. It will have question, answer, right? The idea is that you think in the target language, which someone mentioned before, okay, that there's no translation. It explicitly says, we don't want you to start with the first language. And that is why there's no discussion of the first language, okay? They don't want to say, in Spanish, you say, I have 12 years. In English, you say, I am 12 years old, right? Because you don't want them doing that. As far as a direct method concerned, you've got Spanish right here, and then you've got English right here. And you want them to run along in parallel, not to run along together. Teachers should be able to speak only in the target language. Okay, so this could be a problem, right? Why could this be a problem? Think of our first video last week.
Teachers may not be fluent in
Right. Now, I don't know how fluent that Vietnamese teacher was, but it's not uncommon in EFL situations to have non-fluent teachers who much prefer and are much more comfortable to teach through the native language than entirely in the second language. Sandy?
Thinking of adult students, this might stress them out.
So Sandy says this might stress out adult students. I agree. Why? Why might it stress them out?
Because, okay, think of one person that hasn't taken English classes, which at least in Mexico doesn't really have, you don't find those kind of people very often because we're always exposed to English. But think of somebody that hasn't taken English in a long time.
Sure.
Then they go to the class and first of all, they see that it's a foreigner. I'm already afraid because he might not understand my language. He starts speaking in English. I don't have a clue of what he's saying. I don't understand. I want to quit.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about how that reflects the Japanese video that we saw last week. What did some of the Japanese, at least one of the Japanese learners said something very similar. What did she say? Do you remember?
She didn't feel like she could
be successful.
Diego?
I don't know if I'm thinking of the right one, but one of them said that he was excited about the passage that they were reading, but then
No, that was the guy, and that was not the one of the girls said it's a kind of a good crutch, right? It's a good scaffold to be able to translate from one. And then the other guy said what you were saying. He said, yeah, that's a nice scaffold, but it's boring as heck, right? I want to be able to, you know. So yes, Sandy, I think one of the things is that it's very reassuring, right? Because you're not given an entire language system to play with. You're given a very specific part of it, and you're working in routinized utterances. So everybody's like, awesome, you know. Oh God, Lucy's going to pick on me. No problem. I know what it is I've got to say. There's only one possibility, and the only thing I could get wrong is the verb tense. So let me work on it, work on it, work on it, right? So whereas if you're in a communicative-based classroom, I might ask you anything, right?
Students are not independent either.
Say that again. Yeah. So a good question, Sandy, is whether how you build autonomy. You know, and I think, and you can feel free to disagree, but I think the answer is it depends on who you are. So someone might be super happy with having this scaffold, right, at the very beginning, so that they can walk into Spanish class or French class or whatever, and they don't panic because they don't think they're suddenly going to be asked something that they've got no idea, right? Another learner in the same class might say, I'm not even going to class because I know what's going to happen in class, and I'm not interested in spending 45 minutes repeating, are you 12 years old? No, I'm 22 years old. Are you da, 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 da. So I think, you know, this is part of the issue, you know, to think about who might benefit from a structure like this and who might now. So now we have 10 people in this classroom. How many of you think you would have benefited from this as your first class in English? So no writing, just this. Diego says yes, Naomi says yes. One person thinking about it. Yeah. Sandy's thinking about it. Yeah. I think I would have thrived in this as opposed to the Chinese classes I had when I was a beginner Chinese, in which we did virtually no speaking, but a ton of character writing and vocabulary learning. But I think if we had done these short, tiny dialogues where I could actually start speaking, I would have had a good time, you know, but, you know, I don't know. But obviously, after you get to an intermediate level, these kind of things, you know, you got to pick something else to do. All right, so one is speaking only in the target language, which can be a problem for some places in teaching EFL. Use Realia. So you didn't see a demonstration of that, but Realia is just anything that, you know, that you might be, you know, is Lucy drinking water? Is Lucy drinking lemonade? No, Lucy is drinking water, you know. Does Lucy like lemonade? I don't know. Lucy is drinking water, you know, I mean, on and on and on and on. So you can use that. Again, the idea of Realia is to ground the language in the real world. It's completely the opposite idea of grammar translation. Grammar translation is sort of off with the literary canon, right? So that hence Gowan's issue that you could then you could not speak the language, okay? Direct method is grounded inside the here and now with basic vocabulary, basic questions. Demonstrate, not explain, okay? Inductive, not deductive. I don't tell you specifically, hey, I know why you're saying have, because in Spanish it's have, but in English it's be, so, you know, and that's an interesting issue. Think about that for a second. For children, they respond to it super well. What about adults?
For rules,
Yeah.
I want to know why.
Yeah. So Sandy's saying they want to know why, and Nana's saying they prefer rules. And frankly, that's my bias too. That adults are primarily cognitive beings. So, and they already, and Diego's not sure he agrees with me, and they already learned a language once. So they already understand that there are things that are done in a certain way, that's just the way it is. You know, you choose a certain verb to do a certain thing. So they don't need to understand the concept. They just need to understand what the difference is between their first language and their second language. So, yeah, my own bias is definitely towards explanation for adults, but you will see that many of these methods that we look at, the bias is not towards explanation for adults. So it's absolutely, you know, that's just my, we talked about teacher maxims and teacher myths, the things that you carry through with you as a professional, that's mine. I mean, it just is. One of the things that happened to me in Hungary was they had a little postposition particle at the end of certain sentences that did a certain job, and damned if I could work out what it was. I mean, you know, I didn't know when to use it, I didn't know when not to use it, and then somebody finally explained what it was grammatically, like when grammatically you should use it and when not, and I was like, oh, well, that's super easy. But you know, because I could understand the underlying process for it. Up until then, it had been kind of a crapshoot. I wasn't sure when to use it and when not to use it. So that's my bias, but many people would not agree with that. Demonstrate, not explain, is that facilitate self-correction. How did he do that? Yeah, no.
I was saying, like, they would say slowly, he.
Okay. Yeah, right. Okay. So the students had to correct themselves, right? That poor little kid with the little hat on was just like, and then the kid next to him is like perfect English. It must be like, shoot me now. Yeah. You can already see how that begins, right? You got perfect little David right here, and then you got the little kid next to him who's constantly getting his verb forms wrong, and you're like, I see this coming a mile off as to who's going to do this. All right, and not come between the students and the language. Okay, so coming between the students and language would be asking for translation, asking for explanation, giving deductive reasoning. They are all coming between the person and the language, okay? All he does is keep piling on the language and correction without saying anything about anything. Okay. Do those things make sense?
With younger kids especially, how do they keep them or encourage them not to use their native language?
They do that. It's bloody exhausting, is what I can tell you, Diego. I did it in Hungary for a while, and with 5 and 6 year olds. And basically, you go for about 10 or 15 minutes doing that. Then you're like, oh God, I'm gonna kill myself. So then I would have them move all the chairs and have them do stop, go running across the classroom. So I'd say run and then stop and then go and then stop, you know, and they'd do that for 10 minutes. And then they'd sit back down again and we'd do that for 10 minutes. And then please God, I was nearly at the end of the lesson session. Yeah.
You cannot do a 40-minute lesson like this with children.
Yeah. No, it drives you nuts. Children actually love it. You know, let's think about children for a second here. Children like nursery rhymes. Children love repetition. Children love anything. You know, songs that are the same, that are the same, that are the same. Yeah. Yeah. Children go for this completely. Adults, you'd have to think about it. You know, would you go for it? I don't know. Maybe some of you would and some of you wouldn't. Did any of you learn this way? No. No, it would be unlikely that you would, because it was really a later thing. But what do you think? Do you think, Sandy?
Now that you mentioned your like that it would have worked for you, I think of like my frustrating Thai lessons.
Thai lessons?
That if I just felt that it was too much, that they were going too fast, that I was not even getting one thing and they were already throwing me another sentence.
Right.
So probably this would have worked in the sense of I need my time to take one thing.
Right. Right. I felt right. So you're talking about so this was my experience with Chinese. The primer that we work from in Chinese, which is a very common primer, you know, had a page of stuff that included a ton of vocabulary and some character learning and a couple of sentences. So you did the whole thing, like in a 50-minute or hour and a half lesson. You didn't spend 30 minutes, you know, going over the same language, you know. And then what these kids do is go home with that language. You know, they don't then give them another 20 million vocabulary words to learn, or, you know. So it's worth thinking about in terms of beginner level, in order to stop that panic, that initial panic of we're going too fast. You know, I can't, but it's a fine line, right? Because adults are adults. At a certain point, they're like, yeah, okay, I don't want to say her hair is not long, her hair is short, you know, he is not 12, he is 2. You know, so there's a sort of fine line that you're working with on something like the direct method with adults, you know, where on the one hand, you want to provide some comfort, maybe that you're not moving at too much. And on the other hand, you want to recognize that they're not 5, right? That they're 25 and they've got a full-blown brain working. So, you know, tricky, right? And if we knew the answer to exactly what their absolute best standard was, we'd have 100% fabulous language learners. But the truth is we don't know the answer to that. And I think the reason we don't, at least partially, is because what works for me isn't going to work for someone else. So the reason we don't is that we're all doing it a little bit differently. We're all having different individual factors that are impinging on that learning process. All right, so how does this differ from grammar translation? So Diego?
Everywhere.
Okay, good. Everywhere. Give me one of the everywheres, Diego.
They don't have the explicit grammar rules.
Okay, good. One is you don't stop and discuss the language, right? You don't talk about the language with explicit grammar rules. You just do it. Okay, good. Nana?
Productive skills are taught from the beginning of the language expression.
Good. Productive skills, in this case, speaking, primarily speaking, but also obviously you have to do some listening, are taught from the absolute beginning. You don't do a translation work from reading and writing. Yep.
They don't depend on the native language?
Thank you, Carmen. They do not depend on the native language at all. In fact, that's wrongity, wrong to depend on the native language, okay? It's one of the reasons that Berlitz schools had these videos, because God help you if they saw you translating something, because you're not allowed to get between the student and the language, with the first language, with deductive rules, with anything. Good.
Implicit teaching of grammar.
As opposed to, yeah, as opposed to explicit. Good. So implicit through repetition, as opposed to here's this, like we saw with the Betty Azar, right? Here's a passive. Here's how you make the passive, right? Boo, 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 and then practice. In the direct method, you would just start saying a whole load of, did he kick the ball through the window? Yeah, oh no, what would be a passive? Who, you know, it would have to be, yeah, so it would have to end up with who kicked the ball. The ball was kicked by Billy, you know, or the ball was kicked through the window by Billy, you know, who hit the cat on the head. Sorry, that's terrible. You know, the cat was hit on the head. I just want to tell you that that's because I just got a barn kitty, so now I'm thinking about the kitty. I just took a barn kitty home. I don't know if any of you out there or here have relocated barn kittens, but sorry. You basically take them from the barn and you put them in a pet cage and you leave them there for 2 weeks, you know, so that they get used to living at your house and not at the barn. And I'm finding it rather traumatic, to be frank, you know, because the cat wants to come out and they're like, don't let the cat out because then it will run off and it will die. So, yeah. So anyway, that's just by way of saying that's why I'm having bad cat analogy examples. Yeah, okay. Good. Anything else that we can think of? Yeah, Nana.
English learning is taught through communication. So there's interaction between the teacher and the student and the student and the student.
Perfect. Language is in fact taught through communication. So there's interaction between the teacher and the student, and also controlled interaction between student and student, which we didn't see, but that's exactly what would happen. Yes.
The student has to think in the target language, I mean in the direct method, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The idea is that the learner, you really are trying to block the learner from focusing on their first language in any way, shape, or form. Okay.
Perfect pronunciation.
Yes, although not as bad as the next one that we're gonna do. Yeah, direct communication prioritizes speaking, but it really prioritizes grammar, whereas what we're about to do in audiolingual, which is next week, which you're previewing for us, Sandy, focuses on pronunciation. So there's no translation, no mediation. Talking is prioritized above writing. Communication is primary. Self-correction prompted by the teacher is encouraged. Grammar points are learned inductively by immersion. So immersion is a word that's going to come back in some of these other methods. Immersion just means you spend so much time doing it that hopefully it sort of goes into your skull. Grammar points are learned inductively, yeah, by immersion, and syllabus is topic-based, not grammar-based. So we didn't talk about that again, but that's true, right? So the idea is that instead of, Yes, precisely. That you go by topic, like question and answers on different aspects of basic functional language. That's super important. Because the true grammar translation, again, you didn't really see that in the video because they use Wikipedia, which I wouldn't put as exactly, you know, the literary canon, but the true historical grammar translation works from the literary canon, not from, you know, what am I holding? A bottle of water, a pencil, give me the pencil, can I have the pencil? No, you cannot have the pencil, you know, the real basic things that you're going to see in your life. Okay. Okay. All right. Any questions about that little set of stuff? Yes, Savanas.
Is that inductively or implicitly? Because in inductively, the student should articulate the rules, but in implicitly, the teacher doesn't require them to articulate the rules.
Yeah, inductively you can articulate the rules once you've learned them.
No, I mean, there is there a must that they in direct method they should articulate the rules or should they learn them?
No, they should learn them for sure. Yeah. But that's a good question. I've never done the direct method to the point where I've really, well, actually, that's not true. I have, but I've done the direct method with a textbook that then presented the rules. So I don't really know what I've never worked with a textbook that said, don't present the rules, you know, but you start with it. You start with inductive. Yeah, that's a good question. Now with children, obviously you would, right? With children, children are not interested in the rules, but with adults, I always did present the rules eventually. So, but even if you take implicit methods like noticing, sooner or later, if you're an adult cognitive learner, you end up with I think you end up with a rule-based system. Yeah. But that's, of course, a matter of
you cognitively analyzing those.
That's what I think. I think it's impossible not to when you're an adult. But, you know, not for everything, I add, not for everything. Like if you're, you know, remember there are two kinds of language that you learn. One is language that you parse. So P-A-R-S-E, language that you parse unit by unit, right? So, and another one is language that you learn as a chunk, right? So typical chunks might be idiomatic language. Like you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. For example, there is only one idiomatic form in which that appears, okay? But there are lots and lots of our language, much of our language used day by day is learned in chunks or in what's called bundles, lexical bundles of 4 words or 5 words and so on, right? So that's one set of language that you're always going to learn. So that doesn't mean if just by saying that you're going to analyze language because you're an adult doesn't mean that you're going to pass every single piece of language you learn unit by unit, not by a long shot, right? Because a lot of the language that we use day to day, you will use in bundles. You know, they're very typical expressions. So it's not a sort of one way or another way. It depends what it is that you're learning. Any other questions?
How successful was this method?
Well, Sandy, I will say again, sorry, but I'll say it again. All the methods that we're looking at now have been shown to take you from beginner to intermediate, low, mid, intermediate. If you're looking for evidence of this method to take you beyond intermediate to advanced or post-advanced, you're going to have to get out there in the literature and see if you can find it. I will make a bet with you that you can't. But I'd make a bet with you on that for any of this stuff. Not just this one, but for grammar translation, for all the ones that we do. I'd be happy to make for crashing. I'd be happy to make you a bet that you can't find serious research literature, empirical literature that shows that any one of these methods, doesn't matter which one, will take you to an advanced or a post-advanced level better than anything else. I will make that bet with you now, and with anyone out there, and if anyone can find that research, actually can ground that in empirical research literature, that is totally extra points. That's like an A sitting there on the table. Because I honestly don't think you can do it. The literature just does not exist. There is plenty of support for all of these things up to the mid-intermediate level. So my view after 20-something years is it doesn't really matter what you do, okay, to get to that. Okay, you can use Berlitz, you can use Ding Dong Head, you can use coconuts, you can use, you know, but if you want to get to where you are now with your language, that's a whole other thing. Yeah.
But then let's define success.
Right.
Because for some people where we are non-native, it's too much because they just want to be able to communicate on a traveling basic communication.
Sure,
basis, right?
sure. Well, consider when I say intermediate, I mean English for general purposes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But for pretty much any common person, that would be successful enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you don't want to talk about it in terms of general success. You want to talk about it in terms of, you know, well, okay, that's not true. There is success because if you have a particular function you need it for, you're either successful or you're not, right? But you don't want to talk about it in terms of near native like, right? Because that's not. Post-advanced is essentially near native like in your processing of the language, but a lot of people don't need to get to that place.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. So, but to get to an English for general purposes, to function, you know, to go to the pub and ask for a beer and a packet of crisps, you know, yeah, I'd take this method as much as I'd take any other method, you know. It's, but I'd throw that challenge out there. Yeah.
I'd be on that level.
Yeah, I mean, you take something like the natural approach, like Krashen's approach, that was super popular in the 1970s and 80s. You know, if you really look at the research literature, there's nothing that shows you that it goes beyond an intermediate level. It's just not there. There's no empirical proof of that at all. But neither is there for this or for any of the others. Yeah. Any other? All right, then in that case, before we move on to the next one, I'm going to give you a break. So why don't you have, I now make it 2:49. So why don't you come back here at 3 and we'll do the brown stuff, okay?